In 2018, Heather Locklear was arrested twice in 4 months. She attacked a deputy, kicked a paramedic, and was placed under psychiatric hold. Her daughter left town just to escape the chaos. Fast forward to 2025, and she's standing in front of thousands, looking flawless, launching a podcast where nothing is off limits. She talks about menopause, bad filler, and the 20-plus times she tried to get clean. But here's what's really making headlines. The things she's finally saying out loud. About her marriages. About what really happened backstage. About the box of secrets she kept hidden for 40 years. And why she's only now ready to tell the truth. She was born on a September day in 1961, right as America stood bathed in Kennedy's hopeful glow. Westwood, Los Angeles was buzzing with that new era energy, and into that came Heather Dean Locklear. The country was spinning in optimism, post-war promises still intact, and the Locklear family added their own unique piece to that American mosaic. Heather wasn't just another blonde baby from LA. Her blood carried Lumbee heritage from North Carolina, a lineage braided from Native American, African, and European roots. The Locklear name itself meant hold fast in Tuscarora, and that grit would follow her. Oddly enough, buried deep in genealogy charts, she shares a distant bloodline with Tiffany Trump, half-fourth cousins if you trace it back far enough. She was the youngest of 4, the last puzzle piece in a household that was anything but ordinary. Her father, Bill Locklear, had that classic military-to-academia trajectory that defined an entire generation of ambitious men. Colonel in the Marines first, then 3 decades shaping UCLA from the inside. He started in the early 60s, fresh out of uniform, handling foreign students, then rose to Dean of Residential Life right as Vietnam protests hit fever pitch. He wasn't just dealing with dorms. He was managing chaos, student unrest, nightly demonstrations. His military background gave him edge and order in an otherwise turbulent campus. By the 80s, he was Director of Enrollment and Records, then Registrar. Staff remembered him not just for his firm policies, but his quirks, like brewing Irish coffee every St. Patrick's Day, an annual ritual at UCLA. In a time of cultural storms, Bill stayed steady. His discipline bled into Heather's upbringing. Then there was her mother, Diane, moving through the male-dominated studios of Hollywood, not as an actress, but as a production executive. She wasn't in front of the camera, but she controlled what happened behind it. One of the few women with real power in 1960s, 70s TV. That meant Heather grew up with casting calls discussed at dinner, ratings battles overheard before bedtime. While other kids heard bedtime stories, Heather heard pilot season gossip. Diane's influence was subtle but sharp, her career giving Heather the industry fluency most actors only gain through years of rejection. Education-wise, Heather's path looked like privilege on paper. She was placed in UCLA's laboratory school programs, experimental, elite, and brainy, where she thrived in debate clubs and student government. She was articulate, poised, persuasive, traits that came from both the dinner table and the classroom. But beneath that polished exterior, cracks started to show. Around age 10, money grew tight. Despite her father's status, they weren't rich. Salaries at universities didn't stretch far in Los Angeles, and the family's 4 kids meant sacrifices. Heather stepped up, not just academically, but at home, helping her siblings, doing chores, absorbing the value of work before most kids even understood it. Those financial pressures shaped her in strange ways. She might have stayed in academia. She enrolled at UCLA in 1979, majoring in psychology like her father. But then came the sorority rejections. Not 1, but 2 houses, Chi Omega and Delta Delta Delta, turned her down flat. For a girl like Heather, That kind of double snub hit hard, but it also pushed her. Instead of chasing popularity, she picked up campus modeling gigs to pay tuition. One gig paid $500 a shoot, a small fortune back then, nearly $1,800 today. That kind of money was hard to ignore, and soon it was regular work. By her sophomore year, Heather was juggling modeling contracts with psychology lectures, rushing from class to auditions, memorizing scripts between midterms. It was unsustainable. She missed classes, grades dropped, and one day she just stopped going. Her UCLA dream ended not with a scandal, but a paycheck. Modeling was simply more profitable. Of course, it wasn't all smooth. One of her first major auditions was a complete disaster. Trying out for Three's Company to replace Suzanne Summers, Heather, worried about underarm sweat, stuffed tissues in her shirt. One fell out mid-audition. The producers laughed. She didn't get a call back, but humiliation wasn't enough to stop her. Then came the turning point. In 1981, she auditioned alongside a young Tom Cruise for a sci-fi series. Neither of them got it, but the exposure helped. That same year, Aaron Spelling saw her Polaroid at a casting office. He gambled $1,500 per episode on a complete unknown and cast her in Dynasty as Sammy Jo Dean. She spilled coffee on a $3,000 costume on her first day, forgot lines, needed 17 takes. But Spelling stuck with her. That $1,500 risk turned into $50 million in syndication revenue. Then came the twist that locked her into TV history. On November 4, 1982, Dynasty aired Sammy Jo's fake drowning. 28.4 million people tuned in. The ratings spike brought in over $2.3 million in advertising. She had to learn how to hold her breath underwater for 90 seconds. ABC spent $75,000 on effects. The audience was devastated. They wrote 12,000 letters. Dynasty got renewed for 2 more seasons, all from one fake death. By 1983, things got messy. On set, she clashed with Joan Collins in a seduction scene. Collins mocked her acting. Locklear snapped back. Props were picked up. Crew had to intervene. $18,000 lost in filming delays. But the tension made the episode electric. In 1984, Locklear wanted more than glam. She wanted edge. She pushed for racier scenes, even partial nudity, arguing that network TV had to compete with cable. ABC freaked out. The bubble bath scene they filmed was cut. $25,000 wasted. But merchandise sales spiked 40% that year. Sammy Jo became a brand. The next year, the stakes grew heavier. Dynasty wrote in a same-sex subplot between Sammy Jo and Stephen Carrington. It aired in spring 1985 and exploded. Religious groups protested. Sponsors fled. ABC lost $1.8 million in ad revenue. Locklear got death threats, over 3,000 hate letters. Bodyguards were hired. 15 stations dropped the show. But overseas, ratings soared. Foreign syndication earned $4.5 million. Locklear defended the story on talk shows, called it honest storytelling. It wasn't just a role anymore. It was a risk, a stance, and it made her unforgettable. She was making $75,000 every week by the time Dynasty reached its wildest years. Between 1985 and 1989, Heather Locklear wasn't just playing Sammy Jo, she was the chaos. In 1987, the staged wedding between Sammy Jo and Dex turned into a real brawl. Multiple takes, scratched arms, and screaming behind the scenes. Linda Evans, who played Crystal, didn't hold back either. It wasn't just acting. Entertainment Weekly later called it the gold standard of scratching and clawing, and they weren't exaggerating. Heather threw punches in nearly every season. The fight with Amanda got so rough they had to edit it out of the recaps. They even filmed a mud fight and a horse trough brawl so brutal both actresses were treated for bruises on set. And that was just Dynasty. In 1986, Heather showed up for Battle of the Network Stars like it was war. She won the obstacle course, but that's not what made headlines. Her mic picked up the trash talk. "Pathetic losers," she snapped at the NBC team, then started calling people out by name. ABC was forced to apologize. But things were worse behind the scenes. She allegedly shoved Melissa Gilbert during the relay. Security had to get involved. Later, Heather admitted she'd been drinking, breaking the show's no alcohol rule. Future episodes were never the same. They rewrote the entire conduct policy because of her. Then came the swamp. In July 1988, down in the Florida Everglades, Heather almost drowned filming The Return of Swamp Thing. A rescue scene was going fine until the third take. That's when her leg got caught in underwater vines. She was under for 45 seconds. Stunt guys jumped in, fully clothed. Oxygen tanks were rushed in. The heat that week was brutal, 98 degrees. Heather collapsed twice that month. Still, she kept doing her own stunts, got covered in leeches more than once. Doctors had to yank them off between takes. The movie bombed. She got a Razzie for Worst Actress, but nobody knew how close she came to dying. Not until years later. By 1989, that $75,000 per episode had bought her a $2.3 million mansion on Mulholland Drive. But the parties were out of control. She had married Tommy Lee in 1986. He once bragged that she could outdrink the band. Their honeymoon ended in a hotel room fight so loud the Cayman Islands police were called. Paparazzi caught her stumbling out of clubs at 3 a.m. Neighbors complained about the noise. The National Enquirer paid 10 grand for any dirt on her, but Aaron Spelling's team knew how to bury stories fast. Heather's public image stayed intact, but barely. Then, in 1990, she tried something new, Going Places, a sitcom for ABC's TGIF lineup. It was a disaster. She played a travel agent named Lindsay. There was a live audience. She kept freezing on stage, forgetting lines, breaking character. 9 episodes in, she fired her longtime agent. Ratings hovered at 8.2 million, not even close to Dynasty's 25 million. She tried getting the scripts changed, threatened to walk. Alan Ruck, her co-star, said she'd show up late and lost. The show was canceled after 22 episodes. ABC lost 12 million and Heather didn't work for 8 months. Longest dry spell of her career. Then came the comeback. In January 1993, Melrose Place was dying. Aaron Spelling called in his lucky penny. Heather joined in episode 19. She was only supposed to stay 4 episodes. She was making $40,000 per week, double what everyone else got. But by the end of the season, the ratings jumped. Amanda Woodward, her character, wasn't just some boss. She was manipulative, sharp, impossible to ignore. She never lost that special guest star credit, even as she stayed until the very end in 1999. By 1994, Amanda faked a pregnancy to manipulate Dr. Michael Mancini. Locklear played it cold and physical, sometimes improvising slaps or sudden moves that shocked her co-stars. The rooftop confrontations became iconic. She didn't just play power, she owned it. Then came 1995. Amanda kissed Sydney Andrews, played by Laura Leighton. The bisexuality arc was part of a wave of lesbian kiss episodes that defined mid-90s TV. But this wasn't for shock. Their scenes were layered, sexual tension, mind games, business threats. GLAAD called it a milestone. Laura Leighton landed a Golden Globe nomination. The press couldn't get enough. Rolling Stone, People, Entertainment Weekly, they all ran covers. In 1996, Amanda burned down a building for insurance money. Heather did most of her own fire scenes. That storyline marked Amanda's full descent. No more pretending to be good. Just raw ambition and destruction. Her character was no longer just the bad girl. She was television's queen of controlled chaos. From 1993 to 1999, Heather got 3 straight Golden Globe nominations. Her salary climbed from $40,000 to $100,000 per episode. By 1999, Fox canceled Melrose Place, not because people stopped watching, but because they couldn't afford her anymore. Even when talks started about a reboot in 2009, Heather asked for the same $100,000 an episode. The network passed, but Aaron Spelling never forgot. He always called her his lucky penny. ChatGPT said she walked into Spin City in the fall of 1999 like a wild card everyone secretly wanted but no one expected. Heather Locklear wasn't even part of the original plan. The producers had tossed her name around half-jokingly, like a fantasy cast wish list. In a perfect world, we get Heather Locklear. Then, less than 24 hours later, she said yes. That one yes flipped the script. She stepped into the role of Caitlin Moore, the smart, polished political strategist brought in to manage the mayor's senatorial campaign. Her paycheck? Somewhere between $150,000 to $175,000 per episode, putting her among the highest-paid actresses on television. But it wasn't just the money. She brought edge, intelligence, and a touch of chaos to Michael J. Fox's world of city politics. And viewers responded immediately. The show shot to #1 in its new time slot, especially among the 18 to 49 crowd advertisers live for. All this, just as Fox's battle with Parkinson's quietly started to show, and Locklear's arrival became more than just a casting move, it became a rescue mission. With Caitlin and Mike on screen together, it wasn't just office politics, it was chemistry waiting to combust. The writers leaned into it, hard. Their flirtation had rhythm, tense meetings, lingering glances, then jokes that cut just a little too close. One episode had Mike trying to go celibate for a week, just to prove he had feelings for her beyond the obvious. He failed, of course, but the collapse made it even better. Then Charlie Sheen arrived in 2000, and everything shifted. The romantic tension didn't disappear, it detonated in a new direction. Now it was Caitlin and Charlie Crawford trading heat. In one standout episode, The Wedding Scammer, Caitlin's mother pushes her to get married. So Charlie tags along to a family wedding, pretending to be her boyfriend. The improvisation got so real that cast members were breaking character mid-scene. Those storylines became some of the show's most rewatched episodes, not because they were romantic in the usual way, but because they walked the line between tension and laughter, like only Locklear could. Then came the awards. Locklear's transformation from the cutthroat Amanda of Melrose Place to comedy standout in Spin City wasn't just a career pivot. It was Golden Globe-nominated proof of her range. She snagged nominations in both 2000 and 2002, right in the thick of Spin City's golden stretch. But behind the laugh tracks, there was pressure. Fox's Parkinson's was progressing, and it wasn't just his motor skills that were changing. His expressions, his timing, they were shifting, subtly at first. In a 2019 interview, Fox admitted he could feel his face hardening. Locklear had to adjust in real time. It wasn't easy playing off someone whose comic rhythm was slowly being stolen. She later admitted she needed therapy during this time. The jokes, the filming, the industry, all of it piled up. She was carrying more than her scenes. The chemistry shift from Fox to Sheen was just as jarring behind the camera as it was on screen. At a panel in 2024, Locklear laughed as she described it. "Michael is a fast guy. Charlie is... Timing wasn't just about punchlines, it was muscle memory, and she had to relearn everything. When Fox made a guest appearance in 2001, both leads were on set. The vibe? Electric, but not smooth. They filmed 3 episodes in just 2 days. Fox was also juggling public advocacy work, flying in and out between scenes. Locklear? She kept the ship steady. The crew noticed. The cast noticed. And when they reunited at Fan Expo in 2025, she called Fox one of her all-time favorites. That kind of praise doesn't come casually in Hollywood. She stayed with the show until the very end. April 30th, 2002. By then, Spin City had clocked 145 episodes across 6 seasons. Locklear had appeared in 132 of them. Rumors swirled about her leaving in 2004, but that was just noise. The show itself wrapped up in 2002. Her final episodes had everything: relationship drama, near weddings, and enough comedy to keep the momentum alive all the way to the last credits. Ratings stayed strong, especially during the later seasons when the production moved from New York to LA. But the finale felt like closing the book on something bigger than just a show. It was the end of a kind of TV we don't really see anymore. Ensemble comedies with smart writing and room to breathe. Caitlin Moore's journey from guarded political strategist to emotionally open romantic lead became a quiet metaphor for Locklear's own shift. Less guarded, more layered, always watchable. People often misremember what came next. Some say she tried to reboot Uptown Girls in 2006. Not quite. In 2003, she'd played the emotionally distant mother in the original movie. But the 2006 project was something different entirely. A pilot called Women of a Certain Age. It never aired. Networks didn't bite. It was her first public stumble as a lead after years of wins. The show focused on women navigating life's later chapters, but it couldn't compete with the wave of reality shows starting to dominate the airwaves. For Locklear, it marked the start of a career transition, from network darling to industry survivor. In 2009, she stepped into a role that hit a little too close to home. Flying By was a small-budget indie drama, starring Billy Ray Cyrus as a man facing a midlife spiral. Locklear played his wife, a woman crushed under addiction and disappointment. It wasn't fiction. At that point in her life, she was quietly navigating her own battles with substance abuse and a string of public controversies. Critics didn't love the movie, but her performance? Raw, vulnerable, unfiltered. One reviewer called it the closest we've come to seeing Heather Locklear unmasked. The film was also the final screen appearance of Patricia Neal, lending it a weight that no studio could have manufactured. By 2012, Locklear found herself back in comedy, this time on Hot in Cleveland, playing Chloe, a PR executive with teeth and sass. She joined in season 4, when the show was pulling in 1.34 million viewers per episode. Her appearances were among the most watched that season. Fans tuned in for nostalgia, sure. But what kept them watching was her sharp delivery and how easily she clicked with the cast. It felt like she had never left television. And maybe, in spirit, she hadn't. From there, she pivoted again, this time into courtroom drama. On Franklin and Bash, she became Rachel King, the woman who made the show's title characters sweat. She tore into legal jargon like she'd been doing it for years, while also playing emotional undercurrents just beneath the surface. Her scenes with Mark-Paul Gosselaar created just enough sizzle to get industry buzz going, but both actors kept it professional. This role came during a time when Locklear was slowly reclaiming her place in Hollywood, not as a tabloid fixture, but as a working actress with real chops. Then came the Melrose Place wave again. In 2024, a podcast called Still the Place launched, hosted by her old co-stars. They revisited episodes, shared secrets, and unpacked drama both on and off screen. While Locklear didn't join as a regular, her presence hovered over nearly every episode. Stories about her character, Amanda Woodward, kept resurfacing, some hilarious, others surprisingly poignant. She became a kind of myth inside her own legacy, the name everyone brought up even when she wasn't in the room. By 2009, she took a quieter role in Flying By, an indie film most people missed in theaters. But for her, this was no ordinary gig. She played a woman barely holding on, married to a man in the middle of a midlife spiral. The character drank too much, snapped too often, and held in pain until it spilled over. What made it hit harder was how closely it mirrored Locklear's real life. This wasn't acting. This was therapy in front of a camera. Even critics who panned the movie paused to acknowledge her performance, raw, jagged, and full of the kind of pain that doesn't need rehearsing. And then came Hot in Cleveland. Not just a comeback, but a reminder. From 2012 to 2013, she appeared as Chloe, a former Miss Ohio who turned her pageant past into a sharp-edged PR career. Viewers loved it. Ratings hovered around 1.34 million during her season, making her episodes the most watched. It was the kind of role that let her be both funny and fierce. The character's confidence felt like a mask Locklear could wear just long enough to keep going. And it worked. For a moment, the chaos faded. Next was Franklin and Bash from 2013 to 2014, where she brought ice-cold precision to the courtroom as Rachel King. She was tough, intimidating, but not without cracks. There were rumors of chemistry between her and Mark Paul Gosselaar off-screen, but nothing ever stuck. What did stick was the respect. Audiences loved seeing her stretch again, and insiders noticed how seriously she took the work despite everything going on behind the scenes. The show may have been light and quirky, but she brought weight to every scene. And then, just when the industry had almost written her off, a podcast changed everything. Not hers, at least not yet, but one called Still the Place, launched in July 2024. Hosted by former Melrose Place co-stars, it quickly became a haven for fans of 90s primetime soaps. Her name came up constantly. They talked about her brilliance, her discipline, her stories that never made it to air. Even without her being present, she remained the gravitational center of the show. In between, she popped up in unexpected places. On Don't Trust the Bee. In Apartment 23, she played herself, with biting humor and no fear of mocking her own fame. These were strategic appearances, 2 episodes here, 1 cameo there, but they kept her visible while she was still quietly rebuilding a life outside of TV. Of course, none of this erases what happened between 1986 and 2025. Her marriage to Tommy Lee in 1986 looked perfect on paper. Young, famous, reckless love. Until the cheating became public, the affairs got caught on camera, and Locklear was left admitting she'd only ever planned to get married once. 7 years later, she filed for divorce. And it wasn't just a breakup. It shattered her public image and cracked something inside. She tried again. In 1994, she married Richie Sambora. It started better. They had a daughter, Ava, in 1997, after 35 hours of labor and an emergency cesarean that would stay with her forever. But Sambora toured relentlessly, and the distance widened. In 2006, she filed for divorce after finding something. Emails, pictures, nobody knows the full truth. But it was enough. He was blindsided. They eventually found a way to co-parent, but the damage was done. And then came Chris Heiser, high school sweetheart, reunited in midlife. They got engaged in April 2020. For 5 years, it looked like redemption. She posted photos, called him her forever. But by early 2025, it was over. No big drama, just silence. Friends said it had been falling apart for months, and she had already moved on. This time, she chose herself. That decision wasn't random. In 2018, her world completely unraveled. First, there was the February arrest, domestic violence, allegations she'd attacked her parents. Then, in June, another call to 911. She'd reportedly tried to hurt herself. When police arrived, she punched a deputy and kicked a paramedic. She was hospitalized under a psychiatric hold and later pleaded no contest to 8 misdemeanor counts. The court sentenced her to 30 days in a mental health facility. Her daughter, just 20 at the time, begged her to go to rehab. Left to pick up the pieces, Ava eventually left town to get a break from it all. The cycle was brutal. Overdoses, psychiatric holds, and more than 20 stints in rehab. One insider said it may have been 25. Alcohol, pills, depression. She'd fought all of it. But by late 2019, something shifted. She started to show up. She stuck with therapy. And in April 2020, she hit 1 full year sober. Ava sent cupcakes spelling out, "I love you, Mama." It wasn't just a sweet gesture. It was a signal that they'd found each other again. Her former Melrose Place co-stars celebrated her on Instagram, and she slowly began stepping back into the spotlight. Not for fame, but for purpose. In August 2025, she joined Michael J. Fox and William Shatner on stage at Fan Expo Toronto. It should have been a nostalgic gimmick. Instead, it went viral. She revealed secrets from Spin City, like the unaired kiss scene between her and Fox that never made it to air. The crowd lost it. And just like that, she was back in every headline. Not for scandal, but for charm. A month later, in September 2025, she launched a podcast called What Do You Want? With Jillian Barberi and a nurse named Melanie Mansell. It blew up. Listeners called in every Wednesday night. She talked menopause, hormone therapy, bad plastic surgery, trolls, dating over 40. Nothing was off limits. She even admitted regrets about early filler injections that made her look unnatural in her Dynasty days. Her podcast wasn't just personal, it was fearless. The photos from that launch, barefoot, strapless, white sundress, sun-kissed hair, went viral in hours. People couldn't believe she was 63. One commenter wrote, "You do not age Heather." And they weren't exaggerating. The images made headlines, not because of glamour, but because of grace. In October 2025, she took the stage at Calgary Expo, but this time not as a star, as an advocate. She sat on a mental health panel, openly discussing her outpatient treatment that started in 2019, her years of relapse, her turning points. It was the first time she spoke about it in public.